And it's I mean, you don't see too many of these other uh, what would you call it? Like luxury cars. It's almost like things have sort of been tampered a little bit, like taken down just a little bit in the last year or so, last little while. I don't know. What are you guys seeing? Maybe all those people left. Maybe they left the country, or maybe they're working from home, so they don't need those cars anymore, right? Oh, good question. Day off on Monday for the Queen's funeral, so this has been receiving some coverage in the media as of late. So the Queen's coffin is was brought in. The Queen's body was taken back to London and back to Buckingham Palace. I mean, these things are all being covered. I haven't looked up what type of coffin she's going to get, and I was kind of interested in this only because Queen's coffin. What would it be consist? What would it be? Is it going to be? I don't know if they're going to actually give you any sort of details about the coffin itself, because when the Pope died, when Pope John Paul II died, they gave a whole, like I remember a whole newspaper like middle page being dedicated to how the body of the Pope would be preserved in the catacombs of the Vatican. And I sort of wonder if, I mean, I can only imagine that, the Queen's going to get, a nice coffin as well. Like the Pope's coffin is super secured and everything, not just like from outside invasions or outside tampering, but like inside as well. It's meant to preserve the body for quite a long time. So it's kind of, I don't know why I think of these things, but I mean, as a traveler, you might not be so lucky to get that sort of burial, and certainly with the paycheck that I get, you're not going to get that burial either. But that being said, some people aren't unhappy that she's gone. I was actually surprised by some of the comments that people were making that they didn't care, and maybe it's time for certain members of the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, to move on from having the Queen as head of state. I don't see it happening. I don't see how that's going to sort of take place just yet. I think she's going to be staying there for quite some time. And I mean, and it's going to be King Charles III. He's going to be on the coinage sooner than later. So I don't see how it would change yet. There's not much of a. There is a movement in Canada. It pops up every now and then. Not a big one. It's not like there's any votes or anything. I think it's an issue that people. It comes up at parties sometimes, but no one is going to mobilize a force to do anything about. I was a little bit surprised, but even here in China, I heard a few people, at least one person called me a royalist. Like, I don't know if I really consider myself to be a royalist. I mean, the Queen died. Pay my respects to her, sure. She lived a long life. 96 years isn't something to sort of just go, oh well, thank goodness. I mean, she's 96 years is a good time. 70 years on the throne in office. Substantial achievement. I mean, wow. So I wish, how many of us will be able to live that long and be as productive, right? And this is actually part of the thing that some people are saying, she wasn't all she was cracked up to be. It wasn't just her, actually, it was the monarchy itself, the whole system that's in place, that, the colonialism that went on, the whole regal system, the whole monarchy system is being criticized at the moment. Not as much as some other countries around the world, but it was being criticized. And I was surprised that at this time, people took the chance to voice these opinions. I thought, you just sort of be respectful. Someone passed away, someone who's been in office for a while, and leave it at that. This is something to debate with the living, not with the dead, right? But I guess the monarchy keeps on going. So it's although one person has passed, the monarchy system is still in place. And so if you want to affect change, when do you actually say something, right? So, very good question. All right, so okay, so this is the other thing that's sort of been popping up lately with in terms of the Ukrainian push in like not the retreat. It's the retreat of the Russian soldiers, the retreat of the Russian army, the push back by the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian army. Would you learn the Ukrainian language? This question has popped up because even my Eastern European language teacher, who's currently residing in France, as far as I know, she asked. She was trying to test my Ukrainian the other week. Now I haven't signed up for any more classes just yet, but she was trying to sort of get it out of me. This ability, this Ukrainian language ability. I can't say I would rush to go learn Ukrainian. For one of the reasons, almost actually the same reason you could argue not to learn Mandarin Chinese. The people who speak these languages that you would have to resort to, that you would have to use even in such small amounts, to establish that connection, they aren't traveling overseas. They're living in the village typically. And I'm saying this like Ukrainian, again, has been the target of Russian assimilation, Russian attempts to extinguish it over the last 2, 3, 4 generations, the last 120 years or so. So that the fact that the Ukrainian language has survived and is found all over the world is a testament to the strength of that culture. But Ukrainian, as it's spoken, the Ukrainian language is either spoken by people who are what we would call expats from Ukraine, the diaspora, and I've mentioned this before that they're either emigrated from Ukraine or they are direct descendants, like they're first born in the new country from these immigrants. And they'll speak Ukrainian at home. By second generation, that ability starts to subside quite a bit. There's a familiarity with the language, and certainly if they try to pick up the language later on, it's a lot easier because they're usually exposed to enough to get them familiar with a little bit of an acquaintance of the language. But I mean, they're not going to be fluent, and they wouldn't be able to hold a conversation. And I speak from my own experience in this regard. But learning Ukrainian language, who are you going to talk to? What are you going to read? It seems like a very nice romantic idea, but how long would you be able to sustain the impetus to learn this language, which is difficult, as difficult as some other Eastern European languages? Would you find enough of interest to keep you going? That would be my question, especially given that Ukraine is it's a war-torn country right now. I mean, travel advisories all over the place. Now, contrast that with something like another Eastern European language, wherein they also have a lot of immigrants all over the place, but for a variety of other reasons, they're fleeing the country as well. They have been around. They traveled. I mean, there are people who've traveled as well. And they've done business around the world. So, I mean, would you switch? If there was another language that you could learn, would Ukrainian be it? Now, how do I relate this to Mandarin Chinese? Because a lot of people say that, well, you have to learn Mandarin Chinese because, they are one of the most populous languages in the world. And you go, yes, that's very true. But unless you are dealing with the warehouse boss who's never left China and only speaks Chinese, all of the kids under the age of, all the people under the 40 at least have some knowledge of English. Under 30, they're bilingual, even in the roughest sense of it. Under 20, they could make way. They could, get through. It might be difficult, but certainly if they're in their 20s, and if they're working for any company that is dealing with foreigners, chances are they're going to be speaking English and Chinese, possibly a third language as well. So it's, picking up Ukrainian language, picking up Mandarin. I understand there's different scales at work here and very different cultural ties that bind these peoples together. But at the same time, you kind of wonder if you wouldn't stick through Mandarin Chinese, would you go through Ukrainian? If you wouldn't stick through Ukrainian, would you stick through Mandarin Chinese? And keep in mind that Mandarin Chinese is now being found in a lot more places. I don't mean just like Chinatowns. I mean China as a country has been building its business tentacles outwards and have been sending its own people. And we're talking like the working class people who don't know as much Chinese or as much English, and they're going to go work. But are you going to be talking to these people? I mean, if you're in a management role, maybe, but it's a good question. This is something I don't know. I don't know everything, all these sort of facets of this argument, all these sorts of the ways that this can be worked around or adapted to modern. Learning Mandarin Chinese, if you weren't learning the language that you're learning right now, whatever it may be, would you choose Ukrainian? Good question. And with that, episode number 32 of my podcast is now up and available up on my website, stevensersky.com, under the podcast section, under the podcast page. I've updated it. It is episode number 32 with Omar Badr, and former colleague here in China. And he hails from Egypt, and he just returned. I meant to get this episode up a little bit earlier, but I've sent him a copy of it already. He is back in Egypt now after living here in China for a couple of years. And we had a chance to sit down a couple of weeks ago to talk about some of the things that, how life was here in China, and how he what sort of brought him here, and also what took him back to Egypt so soon. It was relatively short episode, 2 hours, but it was a good conversation. He came over and we talked a little bit. We actually talked a lot about Egyptian history, about the Egyptian language, like Arabic, and how it's been preserved. And I think you guys will be interested in sort of some of the similarities and differences that we talk about, address between China and Egypt. Because, I mean, we both know that like China, if you've been to China and you've taught any student from China, they will immediately tell you the country, the culture, it's the people have 5,000 years of history. Some people respond, everybody has 5,000 years of history. The Egyptians lay rightful claim to a couple thousand more than that. And we talk about that. What is the response in that case? How can we reconcile this? All right. I will leave it there, and if you want to have a little clip, if you want to have a little listen to this, the episode number 32, stay tuned. After this episode, there will be a couple clips from Omar as we discussed on episode number 32 of my podcast. That is available, once again, on stevensersky.com under the podcast link. Folks, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. Hope you guys are staying well, staying healthy, getting your runs in despite any creaks and pains, and making sure that you are enjoying the last couple of days of nice weather here in Beijing and internet freedom before things sort of get clamped down a little bit more. All right, folks. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk again. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Boom. Boom. And now I see a mistake on that image. Darn it. Guess I should fix it.